Hello, welcome everyone. Welcome to the webinar. Welcome to the new Hixson Center for Climate and Environment with Professors Tom Donnelly and Lelia Hawkins. My name is Vanessa Chu, Assistant Director in the Office of Alumni and Parent Relations. We thank you for attending today's event and we hope you're excited. Please feel free to type your questions in the Q&A box, not the chat, and we will try to get through as many as possible. I'm going to turn it over to our speakers to introduce themselves. Tom and Lelia, the floor is yours.
I got to unmute. Thank you, Vanessa. And thank you all for being here. It is an absolute pleasure to be talking to you about Harvey Mudd and what's going on here. I hope you guys really enjoyed this update. Again, I'm Tom Donnelly. I'm the Dean of the Faculty and Vice President for the academic program. And I wanted to start before Lelia takes over and we start with the Hixson Center information. I wanted to give you a quick update on some of the things that are going on campus, just to give you a sense of where we are. So for our campus updates, we're starting this year. We have started and will continue this year with a focus on the honor code. So after the pandemic, students are coming back to the college. Everybody's in person now. And we're in a situation where not everybody has been on campus for the last 2 years. And some of the traditions and culture that we have at Harvey Mudd have been diminished to some degree, as you would expect during the pandemic. I think there's been kind of a universal across schools and other organizations. And so we want to, I guess reinvigorate maybe is the right word. We want to really impress the importance of the honor code on our students. And so we're doing things ranging from having our convocation at the opening of the fall semester being focused on the honor code, to having alumni hold webinars like this with our students to talk about the importance of the honor code when they were at Harvey Mudd. We're having honor code day in some of our classes so faculty can talk about these things. And so we're trying to, like I say, sort of reestablish, reinvigorate the importance of the honor code in our culture. Next slide. We've got 6 new faculty, as you can see, who've arrived on campus. So these were folks who were hired last year and have just arrived this fall, where we have 1 more coming in January. There'll be a 7th joining us. And these are folks who are now on our tenure track. We've got a big bunch of people in chemistry, engineering, we have physics, and we have a new Hixson Riggs visitor, Kathleen Burns. So some great new faces, really exciting people are joining us. And we are now in the process of undergoing 11 more tenure track searches this semester or this year. That's a huge number for us. Even a class that you're looking at right here with 6 or 7 people is a relatively big hire cycle for us. And what we're doing now is really the result of the pandemic. We've had a few more retirements than you might have expected normally. And because of hiring freezes, we've got some lines to fill. And so we're working very hard to get those 11 tenure track searches completed this year and bring in a whole host of new people. We also, very exciting, have a presidential search in process. Lelia and I are both on the search committee. Maria Clave, our current president, decided 6 months ago that she was not going to renew her contract. She decided she wants to go on and do some other things now. She'll be completing her 16th, 17th year at the college this year. And so we are in the process of finding a new president. And my guess is that by the end of this calendar year or this academic semester, we will have that person named and introduced to the community. So, watch your emails. It should be exciting. And we welcomed our class of 2026. So 238 first-year students, 6 transfer students. We had the 2nd largest applicant pool in our history. We had very impressive racial and ethnic diversity, as well as increased socioeconomic diversity. And so everybody's off to a good start here. Semester's off with a bang. COVID's been relatively subdued. We haven't had a lot of problems there. And so things seem to be going quite well. Also, this may be of relevance for you, many of you. We have Alumni Weekend this month, October 21st and 23rd. So it says register before September 30th for the early bird pricing. So maybe that horse has left the barn, but hopefully many of you have signed up to be there, and we will see you on campus later this month. So thanks for being here. Thanks for your support. It's wonderful. We really appreciate you guys listening to what's going on campus and staying in touch with the community. And with that, I want to hand it to Lelia Hawkins. Lelia is the Hixson Professor of Climate Science, our very first one. She's the inaugural professor of the Hixson Center for Climate Science. She's also the director of the Hixson Center and associate professor of chemistry. She wears many, many hats and is incredibly good at all of them, wearing all of them. And really appreciate everything Lelia does to get us going on the Hixson Center and getting this off the ground. And with that, I will hand it to you, Lelia.
Thank you, Tom. So I'll spend a good amount of time speaking about the Hixson Center ongoing programs and our new joint major initiative, and then hopefully have plenty of time for Q&A. The Hixson Center for Climate and the Environment is our campus home for all efforts related to climate, sustainability, and environmental studies, including the curriculum development, research with faculty members, and programming campus-wide, such as speaker series and seminars. Like all of our other campus efforts, the Hixson Center is a student-focused initiative, providing opportunities for students to engage in research with faculty members and to take classes. Opportunities for research are shown here on the slide. The first photo is from Costa Rica, students working with Professor Chris Clark in the engineering department doing shark tagging. The second photo in the center is my students this summer working in France on an atmospheric chemistry field study, and that's the research aircraft in the background you see there. And the third photo is from a student presenting at a conference, and in this case, it's the American Chemical Society. And I wanted to highlight this one because our students present in the disciplinary sessions, most often not in the undergraduate sessions. And actually, I was at a conference this week with students and they won a poster award with all the graduate students for their presentation. So this is the type of student-focused work that we imagine the Hixson Center will continue to support. There are many things under the umbrella of the Hixson Center, many components of the campus activities, and I wanted to just take a minute to highlight those moving parts so you can get a feel for what types of activities will fall under the directorship and under the new program. So of course, we have the new faculty hiring. That's the main activity this year and probably for the next couple of years, as well as, and coupled to the new joint major programs. We're hoping to partner with each of our major granting departments to have those new joint majors. We're working at the moment on math and CS. I'll talk a little bit about that. We also want to be sure to support our existing faculty. There are a number of faculty who are interested in working in this area, and the Hixson Center will be providing support for faculty who want to work at the intersection of their current expertise and climate or environment. The Hixson Center is the home for the emphasis in environmental analysis, which is smaller than a minor or a joint major and is the current curricular pathway for students who want to have an indication on their transcripts that they have taken a lot of environmental type courses. So that lives in the Hixson Center as well. And lastly, campus-wide environmental engagement. So when students have ideas, and they want to come to the center with an ask for perhaps a partnership or just mentorship or advice and guidance, those often come through us. One of the main activities of the center is the creation of a solutions-focused climate program. So our students, of course, need to learn the basic physical science of the climate system, what's changing, what are the mechanisms of change, how fast are things changing, but that's no longer enough. If you read about climate change in the news, and in particular in the business news, it's all about solutions. This makes total sense, right? The broad field of climate solutions is where companies, new companies, ideas, and new energy are most needed today. And climate solutions makes the best use of our students' skills and passions. It's a curriculum where students can spend their time on not only the physical science, but the humanities, social sciences, and the arts. These are all critical for promoting the kind of action that we want to see in this problem and understanding deeply the societal impact. And the last thing I'll say about this is that teaching climate solutions as the focus for a climate science curriculum is an antidote to eco-anxiety, which I know a lot of students come in with a lot of anxiety about the climate problem. So it's really empowering to think about the next generation of clean energy technologies or working with community leaders to build resilience into our cities. As I said, the larger vision for a climate program is solutions-focused futures. And so we want to think about what careers our students will enter into when they move through this problem. So this is a list of a few places that our students might move to. You could think about students working in urban planning for climate resilient cities to adapt to the changes that we know are coming. To work in clean energy technology to avoid some of the emissions that we'd like to hope to avoid. Alternative plastics and recovery of microplastics, so more of a materials focus. We may have students working in habitat restoration, perhaps with an eye on drawdown for CO2, as well as potential carbon capture technologies. I hope students will work in intelligent power systems, perhaps using AI to control power generation and management of power systems, and remote sensing, right? So we have lots of information from satellites about how the climate is changing that can help feed into our projections, but we need better advanced warning systems, and we need more sophisticated algorithms to make good use of all of that information. And lastly, we may have students who want to go into climate science itself to improve models and projections through these better measurements. This logo right here is from Climate Change AI, and I want to highlight one of our alumni, Priya Danti, class of 2015, who received her PhD in computer science at Carnegie Mellon and is now a new faculty member at MIT, and who co-founded Climate Change AI, which is exactly the type of work that I expect we will have even more alumni doing through this program. So faculty are, of course, at the center of curriculum development, and we have always had quite a large number of faculty on campus who identify as having an environmental component to their scholarship or their courses or both. But now we are actively recruiting faculty in this area as a result of the new Hixson Center and the generous donors who are supporting this cause. So I'm the first one. I'm an atmospheric chemist. I study air pollution and climate change and their intersection, and I make measurements. This is a photo from me in France this summer on top of a tower with students learning how to make atmospheric measurements. We are so thrilled to be able to search for 2 new faculty members this year who can connect climate or environmentally focused work to mathematics or to computer science, probably some intersection of the two. So we're running those searches right now, receiving applications and looking through packets to hopefully bring those folks on with a July 1, 2023 start date so we can have them on campus. And our hope is to add at least 7 faculty members, so we can have 1 with every department, including the humanities, social sciences, and the arts department, and to build out the joint major program. It's important not just to support our existing faculty, but to bring in these new faculty, because with each new faculty member comes a wealth of new opportunities for students, including courses and research, as well as mentoring for life after mud. And each faculty member creates a unique community of support for their research students and is part of what makes mud so special. I know that I've really benefited as a faculty member and as a person from the time that I've spent with my students, and this is from graduation this past year. Students in my team have formed tight connections to one another and have sought this structure for support throughout their experience at the college, not just the research training they get from me. So as I said, the Hixson Center is also the support system for our current faculty who might not have expertise, particularly in climate science or the environment, but might have expertise that is connecting to that topic, or they would like to learn more and move into this area. And so we've imagined a few ways that faculty can benefit from the growth of the Hixson Center. The largest model for existing faculty would be to have some sort of release from their home department, partial course release up to a full course release, to come and spend 1 to perhaps 3 years working in the center, sort of like a sabbatical, right? Developing courses, developing a new research program at Harvey Mudd, and then rotating out of the center, bringing those courses back to their home department, perhaps bringing concepts back to major courses. So not even separate courses, but being able to teach these topics in courses that students are taking by way of their major requirements. So broader than just the joint majors. And this infusion of climate knowledge, environment knowledge into the curriculum through a rotating model will help to engage faculty across all departments and all fields rather than leaving the expertise siloed in a mini department, for example. We also imagine the center will support smaller opportunities for engagement, like a summer or a one-off course release where faculty can come and have this experience. One of the central goals of the program is to promote climate literacy broadly at the campus, not just in students who choose to pursue a joint major. And we can do this through coursework, research, and as well as community engagement. And because the climate problem is so interdisciplinary, climate literacy for our students looks like exposure and access to all of these fields to understand not just the greenhouse effect and the physics of the climate system, but computational tools that are essential for modern literacy in the climate problem today. How does climate modeling work? How does machine learning work? We have lots of data coming in about the climate system, and this is an important piece of that. And then on the other side, we have engineering and our HSA department. So many of our climate solutions will find their home in the engineering department, whether it's sensors or power systems, perhaps material science, clean energy. This is a natural home. And we wouldn't want students to be learning about the problem of climate change without thinking about, what might we do next? And as scientists, engineers, and mathematicians, a lot of those solutions are going to live for our students in this area. And then, of course, we want our students to be broadly trained. We don't want them to have a blind spot when it comes to policy or art or economics or history and how this climate problem was created and how we might move forward. This makes it a perfect problem for the curriculum of Harvey Mudd, which includes time and energy for all of these fields. There are a number of existing courses in climate and environment at the colleges and at the consortium level. And of course, courses are the primary mechanism that students have to learn things during their time at Mudd, because that's how they spend their time mostly. The courses that are being offered currently through the Hixson Center are largely mine as the current sole faculty member in the Hixson Center. So I've taught an introduction to global climate change, which was very popular, climate science and human behavior, which I'm teaching this semester with a psychology professor, modern atmospheric chemistry, and I am involved in the new impact course, STEM and Society, Climate Change is the theme, which is a multidisciplinary course at the end of the core, and we're teaching it for the second time next spring. Coming soon in the lower box, we will have Climate Science 101, Climate Solutions 102, sort of a kernel of courses that all the joint majors will take, but they'll be open to other students as well. And then, of course, the specialty courses that come along with a new faculty in CS, in math, my specialty courses, a new course that I'm co-creating on air quality and data science with a computer science professor. And so I imagine that this list of courses will just grow and grow and grow as we bring new faculty on board. And there are faculty outside the Hixson Center, even this semester, offering classes we haven't had before. So for example, the new core biology course for first year students has a climate change theme, and we have a new environmental engineering course being taught this semester. In terms of engagement with the community, the Hixson Center is very excited to announce that we, in partnership with the Hixson Program for Responsive Science, that's the Hixson Squared, they're us together, will be hosting the Nelson Series, our speaker series this year, which is starting soon and then extending into the spring semester. And so I realize as I'm staring at this slide that I do not have the dates, but I can put those into the chat when we're done. So our first speaker is November 2nd, Ayanna Elizabeth Johnson. These will all be accessible to you near or far through a Zoom webinar. She is the co-creator of How to Save a Planet podcast and the All We Can Save anthology. So thinking a lot about the intersection of solutions and science. The next speaker is Catherine Heyjo, climate scientist and chief scientist of the Nature Conservancy. She is a climate scientist at Texas Tech and works on modeling at the regional scale, sort of local regional, to advise cities on how to plan. But she's famous really for her efforts in outreach and communication about climate across the political and religious divides. Our third speaker is Amitav Ghosh. He's a highly decorated fiction and nonfiction writer, and he's going to speak to us about his latest work, The Nutmeg's Curse, which takes a look at the intersection of colonialism and climate. And our last speaker in April, Amitav is March 20th, and Catherine Heyjo is February 6th, if you're marking your calendars. Our last speaker is Naomi Oreskis on April 17th. She's a quite famous Harvard historian of science. She wrote Merchants of Doubt with Eric Conway, which is made into a film as well, and is published widely on climate misinformation and the history of that interesting problem. So we hope that when you see the emails, you will sign up to attend either in person if you're local or from afar. So I wanted to sort of wrap up by talking for a moment about the Climate Plus X joint major program, what we're thinking, where we are, because as many of you are alumni, you may be interested in this type of new curriculum. So in surveying existing types of undergraduate programs in this space, we have found that there are three categories of types of programs. The first is engineering or energy programs, often has an engineering department, but not exclusively. The second is a more traditional earth science type program. And the last is environmental studies, which maybe has a heavy influence of biology and may be coupled to an HSA type department sometimes. So of the institutions that we've been looking at, we looked at 35 sort of peer type institutions across 99 majors, minors, and certificates. We looked at top 20 liberal arts colleges and top 10 overlap universities with Harvey Mudd, and tried to understand what is going on in this space. What kinds of programs are people offering? What are the categories? What kind of requirements do these programs have for students? How well do they dovetail with our existing core curriculum, the types of places we think our students are going to end up, and so on and so forth. And of those programs that we surveyed, of the institutions, many of them, 31 out of 35, offer something in the vein of environmental studies. About 15 offer something like earth science, and about 10 of these programs offer something in energy and engineering. And in terms of the types of courses and the prerequisites that we imagine our joint major would have, probably is most similar to the energy and engineering models, which would include physical science of climate, but also a look forward in the 102 climate solutions course, which will have a heavy content contribution from clean energy and mitigation technologies. One of the differences between the energy and engineering type programs that we saw is that every student at Harvey Mudd will be able to pursue a climate joint major, assuming we end up partnering with all the departments, which is the current plan. And that means a student wouldn't have to choose engineering as a major in order to pursue this space. They could do this with biology, chemistry, computer science, and so forth. In addition, by partnering with our existing majors, we give students a lot of depth in one area, whatever that partner major is, while managing breadth in the climate science and solutions space. And in addition to that, a lot of these programs are at larger schools, whereas our programs will offer, of course, as you know, close student-faculty interactions. The 10 courses in humanities, social sciences, and the arts that's already built into our graduation requirements and our curriculum, meaning we don't have to move courses in order to accommodate the meaningful engagement with those fields that we wish to have. And lastly, the capstone experience, which is favorites for some folks, with industry or faculty members that our juniors and seniors will pursue. So we are excited to announce a new climate clinic. We, of course, are going to have students in our joint majors pursue either clinic or thesis depending on the joint major program that they're pursuing and the shape of the student interest. But now we have a newly endowed climate clinic through the Fletcher Jones Foundation. This will allow us to partner in clinic with organizations, perhaps nonprofits or startups, who would not be able to pay the fees associated with partnering in a clinic program, and will allow us to do one of the things that is most asked for by current students and recent alumni, which is to have clinics in this space so they can spend the time and energy that they would otherwise spend on a different clinic working toward this problem. So a few folks have asked us in previous information sessions what success looks like for the program. And so in our eyes, success for this program looks first and foremost like a fully endowed Hixson faculty cohort. We've got 2 coming on board. We'd like to have fully endowed lines for all those faculty. We'd like to have joint majors in most or all departments if possible. We would love to see our alumni taking on leadership roles in the climate solution space in particular. We don't have a lot of time to dawdle on this problem, so we want people to get to work right away. We would like all students at MUD, regardless of their major, to leave with climate literacy, to really understand this problem broadly and deeply. And we would love to have established a reputation for a forward-looking, technically strong climate program, which is essentially the MUD reputation overlaid with climate program. And lastly, to have some industry partners in the clean tech space and active entrepreneurship in clean tech, I think would be really exciting. So that was a lot of information, but I encourage you to visit the website for the Hixson Center. We are currently adding more and more with each passing week. You can contact me directly, hawkins@g.hmc.edu, if you have questions, ideas, suggestions, you just want to reach out. But that is the end of my planned remarks, and I think Tom and I are happy to take questions.
All right, if you have any questions, please feel free to put in the Q&A and then we'll get started.
I'll just say one of our friends here, Aaron, pointed out that you guys can still register for Alumni Weekend through Monday. So just in case.
All right, first question. So there are significant activities in the climate tech space. Any plans to team up with the Entrepreneurship Center to grow an innovation ecosystem of climate tech at MUD and across the 5 Cs?
Yes, I'm smiling because Tom and I were just talking about this. So maybe you want to answer that since I just...
Sure. So yes, plans may be a little bit too strong a word. We're taking our baby steps. We've had lots of conversations. We are, it's clear there's a lot of excitement about trying to do this, and we're trying to find the best way forward for us to sort of engage the Hixson Center with their sort of a budding entrepreneurial program at the college. And we'd like to figure out how we can bring those things together to do exactly the kind of work you're talking about. So this is high on our priority list, but we're in the very initial stages of this.
Great, thank you. We had someone read the book Less is More by Jason Hickel for their company's Climate Book Club summer reading. They ran into an interesting discussion and some conflict between adopting degrowth personally or in our civic lives while working at a publicly traded for-profit company. Have you confronted how degrowth's role in addressing climate change conflicts with academia broadly and HMC specifically? And then how do you anticipate facilitating these crucial conversations with your students in the MUD community more broadly?
Yeah, this is a really wonderful question. I think that it's a real challenge, right? So imagining the model at Harvey Mudd where we grow continually, right? Sometimes on purpose, sometimes not on purpose. The student body grows, we add new faculty. So we have, and we're talking in this webinar, right, about growing the faculty even more. So we have a lot of reasons to want growth in the programs that we find valuable. At the same time, and companies, of course, publicly traded companies, it's grow or die a lot of times, right? And so that is in many ways a challenge, and it is rooted in part in our understanding of how we interact with the world, how our relationship to nature, for example. And so one of the really exciting pieces of the new impact course that we're offering for the spring of the sophomore year is the inclusion of folks from the HSA department who think a lot about this, including our science, technology, and society expert, Professor Vivian Hamilton, who talks about the mindset, the growth mindset, and not in a good way, right? But the growth mindset for what is valued? How do we value nature? How do we value one another? Is it an extractive relationship? Is it something else? And I think that what we need in many aspects of our society is a complete overhaul, which is a tall order, right? But we need an energy infrastructure overhaul. We need to rethink the plastics industry because that's hugely problematic. We need to think about how we're going to source precious metals for all the batteries we're going to need. And we're going to need to think about the way that people build companies and whether or not there's another way to do this. But I don't have if I had a quick answer, I think I could make a lot of money. So I don't have a great answer, but I appreciate that it's a challenge. And I think bringing in diverse voices from the faculty perspective, as well as outside speakers who think about this, is going to help us a lot to strengthen this. I don't know if Tom has any further thoughts on that.
No, but this is exactly the kind of thing, just to say what you said about the impact course, Lelia, that came up in our impact courses, is that these sort of questions are being asked by our students. They're actively engaged in thinking about this.
Great, thank you. Our next question, I assume the MUD community would believe the science true assumption. How much, if any, resistance are you getting from outside the community?
Oh, that's interesting. You mean about skepticism about anthropogenic climate change? Probably that's what they meant. So personally, I have not had the pleasure or displeasure of having a formal interaction with someone who challenged the scientific consensus on climate change at a public event or any kind of college-related event. That's not true. There was one interaction many years ago, but this is not something that comes up regularly in the bubble in which I operate. However, one of the reasons that I co-developed a course on climate science and human behavior is because this is broadly in the world, and especially in the US, this is a problem. And so we do offer this class for students to look at what behavioral science tells us about why people engage in misinformation, why people spread misinformation, why there is a partisan divide, how things become politicized and how those are getting reinforced. And more hopefully, how can we message about climate in a way that brings more people into the fold? How can we talk about this problem in a way that's not polarizing? How can we choose the pieces of this where we have a shared vision for the future we'd all like to see and focus on that, rather than on the pieces that are not constructive? And actually that relates almost entirely to the Nelson series spirit of climate storytellers, because storytelling is one of the most engaging ways to get people excited, optimistic, and actionable.
Great, thank you. Our next question, will the Hixson Center have dedicated laboratory space? And if so, how will it be used differently from laboratory space in one of the existing departments?
Yes.
I can say about my laboratory space lives in the chemistry department. And that's quite nice for me because my office is in Olin, which is a different building. And so it's nice to be able to have that connection back and forth. I can imagine new faculty in the Hixson Center may have certainly will have office space, may well have a lab type space in Olin, but they may also end up with lab space in the other buildings, which would give them the similar connections to those departments that I have going back and forth to chemistry.
Great, thank you. Can you share some of the climate-related clinic projects that students had the opportunity to work on?
I know of one, the ICE 911 project. Yeah, so we have had limited because the first Fletcher Jones endowed clinic hasn't started yet. So it will be running next academic year. But Colleen Cox, who helps us partner with organizations to find clinic projects, has been partnering with the Arctic Ice Project, which was formerly called Ice 911. And this is an investigation of an intervention to try to slow the melting of Arctic ice through reflective, micron-sized hollow spheres made of silica sand. And so students have been working on visualizations of climate model output when this intervention is used or not used. And they've been looking at deployment strategies for how this technology may or may not be used. I don't know of other climate-focused clinics yet.
Okay, thank you. Okay, our next question has several parts to it. So I'll start off with the first two and I'll keep going.
Okay, good.
Is climate science settled? Will the center distinguish between the science of climate change itself, sometimes controversial, and the increasingly polarizing debate on the impact on political, economic, and social interests?
Yes. Okay. So is climate science settled? I think you would be hard pressed to find an academic scientist who would claim that we will never learn more or learn something that will change our understanding of any system, including the climate system. But I think maybe if the question is, do we have enough confidence in our working understanding of the human impact on the climate system to merit infrastructure and behavior change on a scale never seen before? Then my answer is yes. I think we know enough to act and act in a big way. But of course, all science in all fields is continuing to learn more. Typically, as we learn more about the climate system, the projections for how fast things can change get quicker. So it's very rare that you see an update that something is melting more slowly than previously thought or changes more slowly. It does happen, but more often than not, it's the other way around. And then the second one was about, what was the second part? The social, can you read the second part again, Vanessa?
Will the center distinguish between the science of climate change and the increasingly polarizing debate on the impact on political, economic, and social interests?
Yeah, so our faculty are experienced at handling delicate conversations across a variety of topics, right? We have faculty teaching on race, for example. Yes, I think it is possible to disentangle those two. Of course, scientists are always human, and the way that we do our science is shaped by our cultural guideposts. I think we can easily separate the physical science of the greenhouse effect from political and social interest. But the place where things get more challenging is, what do you do with this information? So you can talk about the energy fluxes of clouds or the way that CO2 partitions into the ocean through Henry's law, ocean acidification. You can have all of those physical science principles grounded in the same physics and chemistry and math that students are seeing in all of their courses. But the second question is, now what? What do we do with this information? And so I think this will come into play in the second course, as well as other courses in Climate 102, Climate Solutions. And so we want students to read national reports. For example, the National Academy's report on, what's the subtitle, Tom? The National Academy's on energy?
Decarbonization.
Yeah, so it would be hard to argue that decarbonization is not part of our future. And so what does that look like energetically? What are the physics involved? What's the engineering design principles involved? How do we make that happen? But of course, there's what policy changes are needed to support that. And do you support those kinds of policy changes? Is an open question. And I would imagine students will have open conversations, as they often do, about these matters. And then furthermore, what about social interests? So as we move to a clean economy, a green economy, is it clean for whom? If you build a battery manufacturing plant in underserved community so that you can have more batteries for electric cars, but you have local waste from that, you're recreating some of the inequities of the fossil fuel system. So that will all be part of those conversations. I mean, our role as faculty is not always to provide answers. In fact, more often than not, it's to raise questions and have students learn about the principles and then go and do their research and make their own informed opinions.
I would say, the flip side of this question, perhaps an answer that flips this question around, is to point out that our brand new course, the Impact course, which Lelia referred to, which is sort of a core capstone course, which is in the 4th semester of our students' program now, it's a required part of the core, purposely entangles the questions of climate science, and these sort of ethics issues, economics issues, policy issues. And so we're going out of our way to not disentangle them, but to see that they're deeply interrelated. And you can understand all the climate science there is to understand. That doesn't mean the problem is solved. And so how do you begin to think about, as Lily has already been talking about, how to solve those problems?
Great, thank you. So the next part of it, what resources will be needed for the center to be viable, competitive, and sustainable? What similar college or university climate centers or programs are seen as models for HMC? And will DSA co-educators be assigned to the center?
Resources, that's a Dean question, right?
Yeah, I mean, the resources are, people and space largely, and of course, money is the intersection of those two things. And so, as Lelia has been describing, we have money. We've raised money for 2.5-ish people for fully endowed lines. We'd like to get to a total of 7 plus Lelia plus a director. And we feel at that point, we're sort of in a good long-term steady state for the Hixson Center. So we would need funding for that. We roughly have the appropriate space. It needs to be reconfigured and all those kind of things. So we have lab spaces that are appropriate for the scientists we're bringing in. And so that's going to be really important. And the thing that will happen organically once we have the people in place is we will build a curriculum, and we'll have a curriculum that is going to educate our students and send them out to be leaders in this space, for generations is my fond hope with all of this. So I think that's what we need to be viable and sustainable. And in terms of other programs that we're seeing as models, I don't know if there's any one program that we're looking at as a model for what we're doing. We're looking at what a lot of other places are doing and seeing things that look like they fit well for us, but maybe, not so great. They're doing other things that aren't a great fit for us. So I there's no one place I would point to, but it's clear there's a lot of activity in higher education in this area. Lily, of course, you should fill in the blanks.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And in addition to looking at what other schools are doing, we've started a series of conversations with faculty and graduate programs that we think our students may head to ask them what they would like to see. So it may be that no one is doing what needs to be done, and that we might be well positioned to help students be prepared. So, for example, stronger computational skills coming in is something we've heard. And also this sort of broad knowledge of the larger space.
Great, thank you. Our next question, any plans to partner with the other 5 Cs in aligned areas, especially arts? Do you expect to draw students from other 5 Cs into the new curriculum?
Yeah, so we have been in conversation with all of the other colleges and the corresponding departments, or sometimes individual faculty who are in relevant areas. So that would include Pomona's geology department, as well as their EA faculty, the new CMC integrated sciences program, and the CAC science program. And so everyone is eager to partner. We have been and will continue to consider students' education in terms of prerequisite design for our new courses. So not designing a course that only MUD students can take, but designing a course that will be accessible to students with different core backgrounds. And we imagine that perhaps some of the new courses coming out of CMC in their new integrated sciences program may be a particular interest to our students, since climate will be one of the themes of that program as well. So absolutely, yes, we are in conversation with them, and we'll continue to do that. We are a small space, and so we expect that our students will continue to find elective courses off campus. We need to make sure that we can offer the required courses among our faculty. So that's one of the reasons for the new faculty on campus, is that we cannot build a program that requires students to go off campus, but we hope that they will through their breadth offerings, and that students will come to us.
Great, thank you. Is there a big group of climate tech companies coming to recruit students? If yes, that's great. If not, how will the Hixson Center help bridge the gap?
This is another thing that Tom and I were just talking about. So the answer is no. And actually, one of the things the Hixson Center can do to help bridge the gap moves through you all. So in addition to our own outreach and research on these companies, I'm hoping that we will have an sort of interdependence or interaction with alumni who may know of, or in fact be working in this space directly or indirectly, and can help us find those companies, connect to them, and partner with them. One of the hopes I have for partnership with the Alumni Network is to have a resource for students who are interested in this space and would like to speak to some alumni who are working broadly in the climate solution space. And so that's actually one of my to-do list items this semester and into the year, is to try to build that out as a resource. So I encourage any of you who are listening, who are willing to talk to students who work in this area, to look out for perhaps an email or a request, a form or something. If you see that and you're willing to share your expertise and your wisdom, please fill that out when that comes your way. Thanks for the plan.
Also, I just want to plug in Mud Compass. It is a platform for current students and alumni to be on. So if you haven't signed up for Mud Compass, be sure to do that, as that's a great opportunity to meet, interact with current students as well. It's kind of like LinkedIn, but the Mud version. Our next question: will the curriculum include long-term what-if modeling that includes social political actions? And then our second question involved with that: will the curriculum include scientific reviews of climate change novels for accuracy?
Yes, I can take that one. The curriculum will include modeling across a variety of scales, from sort of community scale, like the air quality course that I was talking about, to global climate modeling. Now, a related question is, do global climate models currently include social political actions? And so the largest source of uncertainty in global climate models right now is not the physical climate system. It's not our understanding of fluxes, although those, they have uncertainty on those. It's actually the choices that we make as humans on this planet. And so the projected outcomes for climate in 2100 are really driven by our emissions pathways, which is essentially social and political actions here. And so in some sense, models like the IPCC report, models the shared socioeconomic pathways, SSPs, and the new IPCC reports, they are already including this by way of creating these potential futures. And you can look at them, and that's actually the subject of my lecture tomorrow, is what goes into this, right? How do we get from our actions to some temperature? What are the steps along the way? And so I don't believe that any climate models I've seen include these extreme events. So I think the reference was Russia's invasion of Ukraine or famine. I do believe that that's a need. And so perhaps one of the outcomes of our program will be students going into graduate programs where this kind of modeling is possible for not just extreme weather events and attribution, which is another related area for one-off or acute situations, but rather these human-driven extreme events like war, famine, what have you, that will impact how we make our energy choices. So I think yes, and more is needed. And then the second part of the question was novels. So books and film, both fiction and nonfiction, are excellent content for courses, and not just HSA type courses, but tech courses as well. Having students evaluate the scientific merit of claims in films, including the behavioral science aspects of films, whether something is effective or not, is something that I've done in my courses. I also did that as an undergraduate myself. We evaluated The Day After Tomorrow, where all of a sudden the Gulf Stream shuts down, circulation in the ocean stops, and there's a massive ice age all of a sudden. And so we had to identify the many climate myths and problematic features of that. You can do something a little bit more deep and meaningful with text. I'm reading a book now called Ministry for the Future that could be part of a course. It's a near-term climate future in which things have gone more or less how they're going now, and it doesn't play out very well. So yes, I think is the answer to that.
Great, thank you. You might have answered this already, but are there any plans to involve the two graduate schools?
I haven't been in contact with them. I don't know, Tom, have you spoken with?
No, I mean, it's an interesting question, some kind of timely that the graduate schools are sort of reaching out to see where there may be areas for overlap. Their focuses tend to be somewhat away from these areas, generally speaking, but the answer to that is no, not really in detail, but it's not that we're against it. We just haven't gotten there yet.
Great, thank you. Let's see, our next question. So to keep global warming to no more than 1.5 degrees Celsius, as called for in the Paris Agreement, emissions need to be reduced by 45% by 2030 and reach net zero by 2050. How can the Hixson Center programs be tailored to produce a significant impact on a short time scale, since 2030 is less than 8 years away?
Yeah. We need to move quickly. I think, so 1.5 degrees C global average is a goal. I think that I would love to see our students doing two things simultaneously, maybe not individually, but as a group. One is we need new ways to produce and use energy. That's right, critical. If we don't have that, then even the 2 degrees Celsius goal is not reasonable, right? So we've got to figure out how to stop emitting CO2 and other greenhouse gases. I think perhaps in the very short term, we might help students focus not on CO2 if they want to go out in the world, because there are much more potent greenhouse gases in much smaller or more concentrated emission sectors. So I'm thinking of like halogenated compounds, for example, or SF6, leaks of methane. Can we tie those in? And so we need to be strategic. We need to give students a comprehensive view on what's driving the physical science of climate. So what are the greenhouse gas forcers beyond CO2? Because the CO2 problem is not an 8-year problem, but there may be other greenhouse gases that we can tackle quickly. It's also the case that the old understanding of the climate system, where you would have decades to centuries of increasing temperatures, even if emissions of greenhouse gases drop to zero, is not the understanding now. And this has been the topic of a lot of media coverage. And I think it really hasn't gotten out there the way that it should. And the IPCC reports have not covered this very well. But if we were to stop emissions, we would have a small number of years of increasing temperature, and then it would plateau, which would still be a problem for ice, which would continue to melt, and would still be a problem for sea level rise, but would help us avoid extreme temperatures going farther. All that to say, there are levers to be pulled in this system, and we can still pull them. So I would love students to focus mostly on mitigation. And then the other thing I would love them to do simultaneously, because we're going to need it, is adaptation. We need to think about making our cities resilient in terms of heat waves. If they're coastal or they're susceptible to heavy rain events and flooding, we need to rethink all of that. There was a recent article about the susceptibility of hospitals to flooding, and I think New York was number 2 on the list of most risky cities. I think Eastern US was the region they were looking at. So you would think it's all Florida, Louisiana, but actually it's not. And so sea level rise is coming. It's coming for us. It's a sure bet. And I think we need to do a lot better job preparing our cities, and not just our cities, but most people live in cities, to handle this. So infrastructure that's resilient to extreme weather, temperature, and flooding is required. We aren't getting out of that at this point. And so we need to prepare for what's coming and then mitigate as much as possible. That was a long answer. Sorry, Tom.
Great, thank you. So we're running low on time, so we'll try to get through as many as we can. Is any part of the Hixson Center to make mud more sustainable, environmentally friendly?
So yes, we have in our sort of short-term plan, the expectation that we will have not just an administrative assistant, but also a sustainability coordinator, which will help us partner with various organizations on campus, like facilities, dining, as well as our campus partners in the consortium. So, a sustainability coordinator at Pomona College and Pitzer and CMC, so that we can not work in isolation, what the other campuses are doing, and work as a consortium on our sustainability efforts. I will say that at the moment, our facilities folks and maintenance have been doing a lot of work in this space, and our students have been driving a lot of this space. And a lot of it was led by the previous Hixson Center and their sustainability efforts to have a lot of outreach and opportunities, but also increase sustainable practices such as composting in the Hawk. So now we have composting in the Hawk. We have solar panels over the carport. We have students interested in re-landscaping, for example. So the questions come up every year. They're driven both by faculty and by students. And I think that we're doing a pretty good job. Better, of course, we can always do. But that is in the near-term plan, is to have someone who can point at sustainability coordination.
Great, thank you. Okay, so last question of the night. So the topic of climate change in our future is oftentimes not super bright and cheerful. How do you plan to handle this in the coursework, especially considering the fact that mental health is already an issue on campus for students?
Yes, thank you, Morgan. Hi. This is such an important question, and it's actually something that I take very personally too, because I spend now all of my time thinking about climate change and teaching about climate change and trying to keep up with the latest information. And it's a challenge for me personally as well. So because of that, and because I have an 8-year-old, and because I work with students all day, I think a lot about this. And in fact, the first speaker that we're bringing for the Nelson series is someone who I have been listening to and reading the works of for exactly this reason. So I read a lot of books in this area. I try to focus my listening and my energy that's not on my own research in the solution space, because there's a lot of people working on this problem from a lot of different angles. And every time I learn about somebody new doing something amazing, whether it's mitigation or adaptation or outreach, it lowers my blood pressure personally. I find it really rewarding to surround myself with a community of people who are solutions focused. And I will say that one sort of small-ish thing I've done is I agreed to join the board of a local organization called Sustainable Claremont. And even though I'm very busy, just being part of this community that's outside mud, of people who are actually on the ground working to implement solutions, whether it's tree planting or education, is both more impactful than anything that I would do myself, and very good for my emotional and mental health. And so in the impact class, we have a solutions spotlight. So we try to end every plenary with a bit of information on what someone is doing in the solutions space, so that they leave the class realizing that there's a lot of opportunities. So we need to get to work, but there's a lot that we can do, and we do still have power in the system. So I think news consumption, media consumption, what are you choosing to focus on, and pointing students in that direction is the best way forward.
Great, thank you so much. I want to thank Tom and Lelia for joining us today and sharing about the Hixson Center with us. Thank you to our audience for your questions and for attending this event. Future events can be found on our website by visiting alumni.hmc.edu. Thank you again for joining us, and have a great night.
Thank you all.
Awesome.